In today's world, because things move so quickly and because we have so many options at our fingertips, I feel like it's a fairly common thing for people to feel like they've lost their direction. Even without looking for it, we're often bombarded by an onslaught of ideas that can always lead to different paths than the one we're on. And so it's very easy to wonder if we are on the right path or to feel like we should have zigged instead of zagged. Like you, I am no stranger to feeling lost and directionless, and I created this episode based on how I've personally used psychology and human design to find a way out of it, as well as what's worked with my clients. When you feel directionless or lost, this often stems from a disconnect between what you're doing and what you truly want to be doing. And one of the best places to help you get back on track and back in alignment is through your human design chart. Many people assume that the feeling of being directionless or lost occurs because there's something wrong with you, or that not having everything figured out is a sign of failure in some way, or that it's a sign of weakness, that only weak or lazy people feel lost. But none of those things are true. Feeling lost or directionless is a common human experience that often signifies a period of transition or a need to reflect on how things are going in your life. It can be a sign that something in your life needs to be adjusted, and whatever that is, it's totally up to you. Everyone experiences periods of uncertainty, and these times can lead to significant personal development depending on what you do. This episode is brought to you by my free Human Design Transits Guide. Inside the Human Design Transits Guide, you'll discover how to live in the highest expression of your human design chart so that you can create the life you want. Head to freespiritalignment.com/free to download it. Now, back to the show. So let's get into it. First, it might be important for you to close out any open tabs that you have in your brain. So before we talk about how to use your human design chart to help yourself when you're feeling directionless or lost, it's essential that you get really clear on if you have any open tabs in your brain and that you're open to the idea of drawing firm lines in the sand around which of these you will pursue and which ones are like, no, not at this time. When we're feeling lost or directionless, it's often because we don't want to be where we are and we are contemplating being somewhere else, but we haven't quite yet committed to doing whatever it takes to get there. So, what keeps many of us stuck in a confused state is that we keep too many options open instead of closing some or all of those out. You close out those open tabs that are draining your energy and keeping you scattered by making decisions around them instead of keeping them open. So let me give you an example. So I had a certain job that paid extremely well, but I was very unhappy with most parts that the job included. But instead of making the decision to leave, I just kind of wavered in like this no man's land of decision making for about 2 years, where I was constantly thinking about my unhappiness and doing certain things that the job required. I was constantly contemplating my different options. And I'm sure there was way more complaining involved than I'd like to admit. So this wasted a lot of time and a ton of my energy. But the most important thing is that it really kept me from moving forward toward the life I really wanted to live. And when I did finally make the decision to leave and I was no longer wavering between staying or going, else in my life started falling into place a lot more easily. But I could have stayed there forever in that stuck place of not moving backward, but also not moving forward either. So the time you spend considering any decision should be short. Your decision making should be swift, and here's why. If you leave that tab open in your brain of should you stay or should you go, should you do this or should you do that, you waste precious energy and time contemplating it when you could be spending that same time and energy pursuing the life that you actually want. So staying stuck in indecision over any decision also keeps you stuck in a fairly low vibrational energy field. But what if I make the wrong decision, you might ask? So I've come to realize that there really are no wrong decisions. There's just the decisions that you make. So look at those open tabs that you've left open in your brain and start thinking about how you can close out as many of them as possible by deciding what you're going to do instead of going over and over, around and around in your head about them. And then also, it's important that you make sure that you fully back yourself and get behind yourself with whatever direction you do choose. Now, number two, it's important that you really lean into your type strategy and authority. And I know this is what everyone in the human design community always says to do, but these are truly the foundations of how to work with your human design chart to create a better life for yourself. So, for most types, this probably means waiting. For generators and manifesting generators, this might mean waiting for something to show up in your outside world that gives you that gut feeling that tells you it's meant for you or that you're meant to do something. For projectors, this might mean waiting for other people to recognize your talents, gifts, and the unique things that you have to offer them. But this doesn't mean that you crawl into a cave and wait for people to find you. You still do need to put yourself in aligned situations to give other people a place to recognize you. And for reflectors, this might mean waiting a lunar cycle. I used to think that it sounded awful to be a reflector until I started experimenting with the lunar cycle, even as a manifesting generator. So there are 64 gates or archetypes in the human design system. And in every single month, the moon makes its way through all of them. So when you truly allow yourself to feel into each of these archetypes over the course of a month, you can get some amazing insights into your life's direction and also any big decisions that you are contemplating. And if you want more information on the transits of the sun and moon through the gates, you can sign up for my newsletter where I email you all of the sun's transits that are happening through each of the gates. I also have a free human design transits guide to help you lean into the higher expressions of each human design transit, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. And if you're a manifester, you really don't need to do as much waiting or wait in the same way as the other types, but you do need to make sure that when you do take action, that it is completely aligned with your goals, values, and also the amount of energy that you have to devote to a project or action. So, what this means also for all types is that you might need to lean more into the signature theme of your type. For generators and manifesting generators, this is the feeling of satisfaction. And for manifesting generators, it's also the feeling of peace. For projectors, this is the feeling of success. For reflectors, this is the feeling of surprise. And for manifestors, this is the feeling of peace. So if you can start noticing when you feel your signature theme, look for ways you can create your signature theme more in your life and start practicing feeling it within yourself, even when there is nothing outside of yourself to cause you to feel it. So tip number 3 is to lean into the higher expressions of human design gates that feel expansive to you. So when we feel stuck, lost, or directionless, we usually don't feel like our lives are very expansive. And one simple way to change this is by picking one of the human design gates and then leaning into its higher expressions. So this can be any of the gates. For example, gate 16, the higher expression is enthusiasm. For gate 58, the higher expression is joy. So look through the 64 gates, find one that resonates with you, and then lean into that expression, lean into that feeling. And this can be done with a gate that you either have defined or undefined in your human design chart. It actually doesn't really matter. Okay, tip number 4, and this is probably my favorite one, is for you to get to know what yes and no feel like in your body and only take action on the yeses. So this would be for all types, not just generators or manifesting generators, but the way to approach a decision might vary by type. So say you need to make a decision about something. So let's use the example again about deciding whether to stay in a certain job or whether you should move on to a different one. But this can be applied to any decision you need to make. So when you ask yourself, should I stay in this job? What does your body feel like? And then ask yourself the same questions for any other options you have and see how your body feels. This can feel different to everyone, and I believe that everyone has a distinct feeling in their body when they are meant to go for something and a different feeling in their body when they are not meant to go for something. So, does your yes feel like your whole body tingling? Does it feel warm? Does it land in a certain spot in your body? Does a no for you feel kind of blah, like a dead weight? Does it feel like colorless wind? These are some descriptions that I've experienced and that some of my clients have described regarding what yes and no feel like in their bodies. What if you're like, I have no idea what yes and no feel like in my body. So, a place to start in doing this would be start with the small things, such as what to eat for dinner or whether you should shop at a certain store or another store. If you're a generator or manifesting generator, you can practice asking yourself yes or no questions as much as you can and pay attention to how your sacral responds. If you're a manifester, you can practice asking yourself open ended questions and see how your body feels in response to taking different paths. For projectors and reflectors, you can pay great attention to how your body feels when you are talking about different options with other people. Not where you're seeking their advice necessarily, but where you're just exploring different options through the power of your voice and through the power of talking. And sometimes getting out of that lost or directionless state just involves taking tiny steps or engaging in tiny actions where you start to not feel lost little by little. I also want to say something important about physical energy. So, no matter what your human design type is, we all need to have the physical energy to act on our yeses, and we need to have the physical energy to get out of feeling directionless and lost. So sometimes just getting realigned with yourself and your next true direction means that you need to sleep and rest, which I think sounds super boring, but it's actually true. I think that sometimes we end up feeling lost and directionless because we are just physically and mentally exhausted.